This family begged for help, but what answered them wasn't human. What you're about to hear was buried, even by the Conjuring creators. This is the true story of the Smurl Haunting. This family begged for help, but what answered them wasn't human. What you're about to hear was buried, even by the Conjuring creators. West Pittston, Pennsylvania, 1974. It started like most hauntings do, with a strange sound, a whisper, a cold draft, a flickering light. But this wasn't just another haunted house story. This was a case so disturbing, so physically violent, that even the Warrens, yes, Ed and Lorraine Warren, would later call it one of the darkest battles they ever faced. So why have you never heard of it? Why did Hollywood skip this case and instead choose to tell safer stories? The answer might lie in what the Smurl family endured, and what they refused to stay silent about. It wasn't just knocking or cold spots. It was violent, it was physical, and it may have followed them across state lines. Before Annabelle, before the Perrons, there was a family being attacked by something they couldn't see, and for decades, no one believed them. Jack Smurl was a Navy veteran, a quiet man, practical, the kind that fixed things with his hands and rarely raised his voice. His wife, Janet, was the opposite, warm, loud in laughter, deeply rooted in family. In 1973, they moved to Chase Street, West Pittston, a small duplex, nothing extravagant. They lived on one side, Jack's parents on the other. For them, it was the perfect place to rebuild their lives after Hurricane Agnes destroyed their previous home. The house had history. Built decades earlier, it creaked and shifted like old homes do. But the Smurls weren't superstitious. They didn't believe in ghosts. Not yet. In the beginning, it was subtle. Pipes banging, tools going missing, the television changing channels on its own. Things you blame on old wiring or tired minds. They ignored it until it stopped being subtle. Their daughters, Dawn and Heather, started waking up at night, crying, saying someone was watching them. The family dog refused to go near the basement. And Janet? She began feeling like she was being followed, even when she was alone. Still, they rationalized it. Stress, imagination, maybe trauma from the hurricane. But one evening, Jack came home from work, and the entire kitchen smelled like rotting meat. No food in sight, no spoiled garbage, just decay. A neighbor knocked that same night. She said she heard screaming from inside the house, but no one had been screaming. That was the first time Janet looked at Jack, and neither of them spoke. But they both knew. Something wasn't right. It started with sounds, not the kind you can record, not at first, just movements, like someone dragging furniture on the floor above them, except no one was up there. Then came the knocking, always at the same time, 3:15 a.m., always from the same wall. But when Jack tore open the plaster, there was nothing, no pipes, no rodents, just silence, and the feeling that something was laughing at them. Janet's moods began to shift. She was tired, easily startled. Her sleep was broken by whispers, long, drawn-out syllables she couldn't understand. And when she turned the lights on, they would flicker, but only in her room. Then the girls began seeing things. At first, they thought it was their imagination. A dark shape standing near the foot of the bed, a man in the hallway who vanished when they blinked. Heather told her mother that the man without eyes had watched her sleep, but there was something else. Something that changed everything. One afternoon, Janet was folding laundry when the air turned cold. Not cool, cold. Her breath fogged. She turned to call Jack, but before she could move, the iron on the counter launched across the room, smashing into the wall inches from her face. She screamed, but no one else heard it. From that moment on, the house was no longer passive. It was reacting, almost feeding on their fear. Cabinet doors slammed shut when no one was in the kitchen. Shadows moved across walls with no source. And once, when Janet stepped into the shower, she felt fingers, ice cold, deliberate, wrap around her wrist. She fell. When she opened her eyes, no one was there. But the bruise stayed for a week. Still, they told no one, because what do you say? That your house wants you dead. By 1975, the house had stopped hiding. Whatever was inside no longer crept in shadows. It lashed out. Jack was the first to experience the shift. He was in bed, drifting into sleep, when he felt the mattress press down beside him. Thinking it was Janet, he turned, only to find her still in the bathroom. He didn't sleep that night. Over. The next few weeks, the attacks escalated. Janet began waking up with scratches down her legs, deep, like fingernails dragged with purpose. Sometimes, she would wake up gasping for air, as if someone were pressing on her chest. But nothing compared to what happened in August. Jack claimed he was in the basement, fixing a fuse, when he was suddenly thrown against the wall. Not pushed, thrown. He hit the floor, dazed, and before he could stand, something heavy pinned him down. Then, he felt it, something breathing on his neck, clawed fingers pressing into his skin. And what came? Next, he never described in full detail, but in later interviews, Jack said he had been violated by something he couldn't see. He used only one word to explain it: rape. That night he didn't eat, didn't speak, and when Janet asked what happened, he simply said, "It touched me." Janet herself wasn't spared. She once felt an invisible hand grab her waist while she was in the laundry room. She screamed, spun around, but there was nothing, except the bruises that formed minutes later. The girls? They stopped sleeping. Through the night, they would wake up crying, claiming someone was sitting on their chests. Dawn even started sleepwalking, something she had never done before. The family priest was called, but after a brief blessing, nothing changed. In fact, it got worse. The mirrors in the bathroom cracked without impact, doors locked themselves, and the smell, rotting flesh, returned, stronger than ever. Whatever lived in that house wasn't content with haunting them anymore. It wanted to break them. By 1986, the Smurl family was falling apart. Jack was emotionally numb. Janet barely slept. The girls refused to be alone in any room, and still, no one believed them. That's when they made a decision, one that would change everything. They contacted Ed and Lorraine Warren. Within days, the Warrens arrived at Chase Street. And according to Lorraine, the energy in the house was oppressive, thick, like walking underwater. She claimed she could feel something watching from the shadows before she even stepped inside. Ed wasted no time. He interviewed each family member separately. What he heard was consistent, disturbingly consistent. Multiple apparitions, physical assaults, sensory disturbances, and an entity that seemed to evolve in intelligence and aggression. But Lorraine saw something else. She described seeing a shadow beast crawling along the walls. In one moment, she said, it stopped moving and turned its head toward her. She claimed it had no face, just blackness. And then she felt it, ice-cold fingers around her wrist. A warning. She whispered to Ed, "It doesn't want us here." After days of observation and spiritual analysis, the Warrens made their conclusion. This wasn't a ghost. This was a demonic presence, and not just one. According to Ed, there were 4 spirits, 3 lower-level entities, and 1 dominant, intelligent force, a demon. They also believed the entity had attached itself to the family, not the house, which meant if the Smurls moved, it would follow. For the first time, Jack and Janet heard the word oppression used to describe their condition. It was no longer a haunting, it was a campaign, and they were losing. Ed documented everything. Lorraine sketched what she saw. But when they contacted the local diocese to authorize an exorcism, they were denied. Not because the church didn't believe them, but because no formal evidence could be produced. No photos, no video, just testimonies. And that wasn't enough. The Warrens did everything they could without official support. They blessed the house, burned incense, played sacred music. Lorraine recited prayers in Latin from memory. But the walls didn't care. The shadows stayed. The Smurls were desperate. So Ed reached out to a local priest, Father O'Leary. Reluctant, but moved by the family's suffering, the priest agreed to perform an unofficial exorcism. It happened at night. The family stood in a circle. The priest walked through each room, sprinkling holy water, reading scripture, demanding the spirit to reveal itself and leave. For a moment, it felt peaceful. And then, it didn't. The air turned heavy. A picture frame shattered in the hallway. The television flickered on, full static, despite being unplugged. Janet screamed. In the bedroom, something invisible ripped the sheets off the bed while Dawn stood frozen. Jack was thrown to the ground by a force no one could see. Father O'Leary continued praying, louder now, commanding it in the name of Christ. And then, from the basement, a deep groan echoed through the floorboards. Low, guttural, not human. The priest finished. The house went silent. For 2 days, nothing happened. No knocks, no shadows, no smells. The family thought maybe, just maybe, it worked. But on the third night, it came back. Stronger. This time, the walls bled. Red liquid seeped from the basement. Ceiling. A neighbor saw lights flickering violently through the windows and called the police. When they arrived, the house was quiet. The officers found nothing. The church, still skeptical, refused to approve a formal exorcism. Without physical evidence, their hands were tied, and the Smurls, they stopped asking for help because they knew no one was coming. Word spreads fast in small towns. By the summer of 1986, the whispers on Chase Street had turned into questions. Why was the priest visiting so often? Why were the girls missing? School? Why did Jack lose weight so suddenly? And then the newspaper article hit. Family claims demons terrorize their home. The press swarmed the house within days. Cameras, reporters, microphones shoved into the faces of terrified children. Janet, eyes wide and sunken from exhaustion, stood on the porch and simply said, "We just want it to stop." But the media wanted more. They wanted blood. Local TV stations aired segments with dramatic music and blurry reenactments. One paper ran the headline, "The Haunted Duplex, Hoax or Horror?" Skeptics came out in force. Psychologists speculated about mass hysteria. A neighbor accused the family of doing it for attention. The Smurls were devastated. They hadn't wanted fame. They wanted peace. But now even grocery store trips were impossible without whispers and stares. Meanwhile, the house responded. Whatever was in there didn't like the cameras. The activity spiked. Objects flew. Lights shattered. Voices, clear, audible voices, began to speak in the middle of the night. Sometimes in Latin. Sometimes in Jack's own voice. But only the family heard it. Reporters eventually got bored. The story faded. Editors moved on, and the Smurls were left behind, mocked, exhausted, and still very much haunted. For the second time, no one believed them. Only now, the whole country was watching them not with sympathy, but suspicion. In 1988, 2 years after, the haunting peaked. The Smurl family decided to tell their story, one final time. They collaborated with the Warrens and author Robert Curran to publish a book, The Haunted. It wasn't just a horror memoir. It was a desperate plea for validation, for truth. The book recounted everything, every scratch, every scream, every unseen hand that had terrorized them for over a decade. It detailed the exorcisms, the media frenzy, and the aftermath. And it didn't shy away from the ugliest parts: Jack's assault, Janet's isolation, the fear that their children might never recover. Reviews were mixed. Some readers were gripped, others skeptical. Religious communities called it dangerous. Paranormal circles were divided, and the mainstream, mostly silent. Then came the adaptation. In 1991, a made-for-TV movie, also titled The Haunted, aired on Fox. It dramatized the events using actors and eerie sound design. It was supposed to bring their story to life, but it didn't. The film was never re-aired, never released on VHS. It faded from public memory almost instantly. No franchise, no sequels, no Conjuring universe connection, just silence. For reasons no one clearly explained, the Smurl case was quietly pushed aside. Hollywood passed on it. Warner Brothers never bought the rights. And when The Conjuring premiered in 2013, there was no mention of the family who fought for over a decade and lost. It was as if the story had been erased, as if someone wanted it that way. No story this disturbing escapes without questions. As soon as The Haunted was published, skeptics began tearing it apart. Some said it was a case of shared delusion, folly, that Jack and Janet, traumatized by the hurricane and the pressures of raising a family, began feeding off each other's fear, until the fear itself took form. Others claimed financial motive, the media attention, the book deal, the movie rights. Was it all orchestrated for profit? But here's the thing, the Smurls never got rich. The book sold modestly. The movie aired once and disappeared. And while people speculated from afar, the family stayed put in the same haunted duplex long after the cameras were gone. Then there were those who believed the Warrens had exaggerated the case. Critics said Ed and Lorraine often amplified stories to fit their spiritual warfare narrative. Some accused them of being more interested in fame than fact. They pointed out inconsistencies, missing documentation, lack of physical evidence, and yet, something happened in that house, because not everything can be explained away, like the neighbor who swore she heard screaming when no one was home, like the unexplained bruises, the changes in behavior, the moments the daughters still don't talk about. And there's one more thing. After the family moved, the new owners reported nothing unusual, not a sound, not a flicker, absolute peace, which leaves only two possibilities. Either the Smurls fabricated it all, or whatever was there left with them. Years later, Janet Smurl was asked one final question. If it was all fake, why didn't you stop? She paused, looked at the floor, and said, because we were never safe, not even in silence. The Smurls eventually moved, not to escape the media, but to escape the memories. They stopped doing interviews. The family grew quiet. Some say they healed. Others say they never truly did. Jack passed away in 2017. To the end, he held firm. Something came into our lives. Something we didn't invite. And it almost took everything. To this day, no physical proof of the Smurl haunting has surfaced. No clear footage. No verifiable recordings. Just stories. Consistent, haunting, painful stories. So, what was it? A calculated hoax? A shared psychosis? Or something darker? Something that chose them, used them, and then left? There's no final answer, and maybe that's the point. Because sometimes the truth isn't wrapped in evidence. Sometimes it's wrapped in trauma. In things we refuse to see because they don't fit our world. And whether you believe the Smurls or not, ask yourself this: what would it take to make you believe?